Rain hammered the marble like 1,000 fists as Lagos turned the sky to iron. Under a black umbrella, Madam Adanna Okafor froze mid-step. Someone was kneeling at her son's grave, clutching a child who sobbed, "Mama, don't go!" Thunder rolled. The roses slipped from Adanna's glove and burst against the wet stone. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice sharp as a blade. "And why are you crying over Chidi Okafor?" The woman stood trembling, rain in her lashes, defiance in her spine. "Because he loved us," she said, "and because this is his daughter." The world tilted. Lightning flared. The child looked up, and in those eyes Adanna saw a reflection. She could not bear a memory, a claim, a threat to everything money had already failed to buy back. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and your local time right now in the comments. Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, London. Your shout-out helps our community feel closer. And if you love gripping African stories with moral twists, subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. The November air in Lagos carried a strange heaviness that day, like even the wind refused to move without permission. Madam Adanna Okafor, the woman once called the Iron Widow in the business world, stepped out of her sleek black Mercedes, her heels sinking slightly into the damp soil outside Greenwood Memorial Cemetery. Every 15th of the month without fail, she came here alone, silent, disciplined, to visit the marble grave of her only son, Chidi Okafor. People in the city whispered about her power, about how she turned empty land into shopping empires and sleeping neighborhoods into towers of glass. But they also whispered about her loneliness, how all her riches had failed to buy her. The one thing she wanted most, the sound of her son's laughter again. Her chauffeur stayed inside the car. She didn't like being followed here. This was her private battlefield, the place where guilt and grief met and neither ever won. The woman in the long black coat adjusted her gloves, holding a bouquet of red hibiscus, Chidi's favorite. Her breath came out like mist, soft and trembling. As she walked down the narrow path between the graves, she rehearsed the same silent prayer she always did. "God, if love could raise the dead, my son would walk beside me now." But then something broke the quiet. A muffled sob. A small broken sound carried through the wind. Adanna stopped. Her head turned sharply toward the corner near Chidi's resting place. Through the curtain of gray rain, she saw movement. A figure crouched low, a woman wrapped in a worn brown shawl. Beside her, a little girl clung tightly, her tiny body shaking as if the earth itself was crying with her. Adanna's brows drew together. "What is this?" Her heart pounded, a mix of anger and unease, tightening her chest. Strangers didn't linger near her son's grave. This was sacred ground. She stepped closer, her heels striking hard against the wet stones. "Excuse me," her voice cut through the drizzle, deep and commanding. "This is a private grave. You should leave." The woman jerked upright, startled. Her face was young, perhaps early 30s, but hardship had carved years into it. Her skin glistened with rain, and her eyes were swollen red from crying. She pulled the child protectively to her side. "I'm sorry, Ma," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We didn't mean any disrespect. I didn't know you would be here." "That's not the point," Adanna said, taking another step forward. "You're crying over my son's grave. Explain yourself. Who are you?" The woman swallowed hard. "My name is Amara Nwosu, and this is my daughter Ngozi." Adanna's gaze shifted downward. The child looked about 6 years old, small and thin, her little shoes soaked with mud. She had the same brown skin as Amara, but her eyes, those eyes had a golden glimmer that made Adanna's heart stumble for half a second. "No, impossible." Still, her voice grew colder. "That name means nothing to me." "Why are you here?" Amara hesitated. Because your son meant something to us. He was..." She stopped, looking down at Ngozi, who was clutching a small plastic doll missing an arm. Then she lifted her chin, voice steadier now. "He was my love. And this child," she rested her hand on Ngozi's head, "is his daughter." The words struck like thunder. For a moment, all sound disappeared, the rain, the wind, even her own breath. The flowers slipped from Adanna's grip, scattering red petals across the wet ground. Her throat went dry. "What did you just say?" Adanna whispered. Amara didn't flinch. "Ngozi is your son's child. Your granddaughter." Adanna blinked slowly, as if the world had gone mad. Then her fury returned like a wave. "You expect me to believe this nonsense?" she spat. "Do you think you can stand on my son's grave and claim my bloodline? Are you after money, no, Ma?" Amara cried. "I swear on everything holy I'm not lying. Chidi and I met when I worked at Mama Nkechi's diner. He used to come every week, said my smile made his day brighter. We fell in love. He promised to tell you, but enough." Adanna snapped her voice, shaking from rage or maybe from something deeper. My son would never hide something like this from me. He respected his family. Amara's eyes glistened. He wanted to ma, but he was scared. He said you wouldn't accept me, that I was too poor, too ordinary for your world. Rainwater rolled down Adanna's cheeks, but it wasn't just the rain. She turned away, her vision blurring. Chidi had been secretive near the end. She remembered smiling at his phone, disappearing at night, refusing to meet the daughters of her business partners. Still no, it couldn't be true. Prove it, Adanna said through clenched teeth. If you dare to claim my son's blood, then show me proof. Amara reached into her small handbag, pulling out an old, wrinkled photograph. She handed it over with trembling fingers. Adanna snatched it roughly and looked. Her heart stopped. In the faded picture, Chidi stood in a park, his arm around a younger Amara. He was smiling in that wide-open way she hadn't seen since he was a boy. In his arms was a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. On the back of the photo, written in Chidi's handwriting, were 5 words. My girls. My whole world. Adanna staggered back. Her umbrella slipped. The rain hit her face, mingling with tears she didn't want to acknowledge. The little girl stared up at her again. Those eyes warm brown with golden flecks, Chidi's eyes. The truth pressed against her heart, refusing to be denied. But pride was a stubborn enemy. This doesn't prove anything, Adanna said harshly, though her voice cracked. You could have forged this. I didn't, Amara whispered. I kept that photo all these years. He died before he could tell you the truth. I just wanted to let my daughter know her father was loved. Adanna's composure finally shattered. She turned sharply, heading back toward her car. Stay away from this grave, she said coldly without looking back. And stay away from anything that bears the name Okafor. If you try to deceive me again, you'll regret it. The car door slammed, tires splashing against the wet road as the black Mercedes disappeared down the lane. Amara stood frozen in the rain, clutching Ngozi to her chest. The little girl looked up at her mother, tears mixing with raindrops. Mommy, did we do something bad? Amara shook her head, voice breaking. No, my baby. We just reminded a rich woman that poor people have hearts too. Meanwhile, inside her car, Adanna's mind was racing. The photo, the eyes, the timeline. None of it could be ignored, and yet anger burned hotter than grief. When she reached her mansion that night, a palace of marble and glass towering over Victoria Island, she poured herself a glass of brandy and stared at Chidi's framed photo on the piano. You had a child, she whispered. A child you hid from me. She slammed the glass down, spilling the amber liquid. No, I will not be fooled. If this woman is telling the truth, I'll find out myself. Her voice hardened, regaining the steel the city feared. Emeka, she said into her phone when her private investigator answered. There's someone I want you to look into. Her name is Amara Nwosu. I want everything: where she lives, where she works, who she talks to, and I want it by tomorrow. Yes, Madam, Emeka replied quietly. When Adanna ended the call, she looked once more at her son's smiling photograph, her reflection trembling in the glass. If that child truly carries my blood, she whispered to herself, then she belongs with me, not with a woman who has nothing. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing over Lagos like tears the city would never admit shedding. Morning sunlight pushed weakly through the curtains of Adanna Okafor's penthouse. It was one of those deceptive Lagos mornings, bright, but still heavy with the memory of last night's rain. The housemaids moved quietly, afraid to disturb the silence that hung in the mansion. Everyone knew when Madam Adanna was thinking it was best not to breathe too loudly. She hadn't slept. The image of that woman Amara kneeling at Chidi's grave kept replaying like a curse. The photograph haunted her. Chidi's handwriting, his smile, the baby in his arms. She could still feel her hand tremble when she touched it. Yet something colder had risen in her anger, disguised as logic. How dare he, she whispered to herself, staring at her reflection in the glass window. How dare he shame this family with some waitress? Her phone buzzed. It was Emeka, her private investigator. Madam, I have what you asked for. Within the hour he arrived at the Okafor Tower, her empire's headquarters. She waited for him in her office, floor-to-ceiling, windows, gold-rimmed furniture, and a portrait of Chidi hanging behind her desk like a silent judge. Emeka entered, bowing slightly. He was thin, quiet, and efficient, the kind of man who could dig up the past without leaving footprints. He placed a thick folder on her desk. All the details are here, Ma. Amara Nwosu, age 32. Born and raised in Mushin. Finished secondary school, didn't go to university. Her parents died when she was 16. She's been working ever since: waitress, cleaner, street vendor, whatever she could find. Adanna's eyes narrowed, and the child Ngozi, 6 years old. No father listed in school records, but He slid a paper forward. The child's birth certificate carries your son's name, Chidi Okafor. He's listed as the father. Adanna's pulse skipped. Impossible. How did she get that? She claimed he filled it out himself. Signed it in the hospital before he died. I confirmed the signature, it matches Chidi's handwriting. For a moment, Adanna didn't speak. She pressed her hands against the desk, staring down at the polished surface, as if it might offer a different reality. And where are they living? Emeka hesitated. At the E-Butte Meta Community Shelter. Small rooms, shared kitchens, rotating beds. They've been there for 6 months. Before that, they slept in a car. Adanna closed her eyes. My granddaughter, in a shelter, sleeping on metal beds like a beggar, her chest tightened with something she didn't want to name. It wasn't sympathy, it was outrage. This is unacceptable, she said coldly. My son's bloodline surviving on scraps. No, that child belongs in this family where she can have a future. Madam Emeka said carefully, the mother, she loves the girl. I saw them together. They're poor, yes, but she takes care of her. She's not dangerous. Adanna turned on him sharply. Love doesn't pay school fees. Love doesn't build legacies. That child will not grow up in filth. Emeka lowered his gaze. What should I do next? Nothing, she said after a pause. I'll handle it personally. That night, Adanna stood before her mirror, brushing her graying hair with slow, deliberate strokes. Her reflection was flawless, still elegant, still powerful, but her eyes looked tired. For the first time in years, she didn't recognize herself. He kept her a secret, she thought. My own son chose a poor girl over his own mother. She set down the brush and whispered to her reflection. If he were alive, I'd have made him see reason. But he's gone and I'll do what must be done. The next afternoon, Adanna returned to Greenwood Cemetery. The sun was high and the earth still smelled of wet grass. She didn't bring flowers this time, just determination. From a distance, she saw Amara again, placing wild daisies at Chidi's grave. The little girl wasn't there. Perfect. Mrs. Okafor, Amara said nervously as Adanna approached her, hands trembling. I didn't think you'd come again so soon. I came because I have questions, Adanna said, her voice smoother than yesterday's storm. Amara nodded slowly. I'll answer what I can. Adanna studied her carefully. The woman looked fragile, but not weak. Her eyes were tired, but her spine was straight. You say Chidi loved you? He did. And you claim that child is his? I don't claim it, Ma, Amara said quietly. I know it. Adanna took a deep breath, pretending to soften. Then prove it to me. Let's do a DNA test. If the child is truly my granddaughter, I will take responsibility. I can help you both, education, housing, stability. Amara frowned, uncertain. Help us, yes, Adanna said smoothly, hiding her deeper plan. You've struggled long enough. Let me give the girl what Chidi would have wanted for her, a better life. Amara looked down. For years she had fought alone, cleaning tables, skipping meals, hiding tears from her daughter. Her pride resisted, but her exhaustion whispered otherwise. A DNA test, she repeated softly. Just that, Adanna assured. The deal was struck. A week later, Adanna sat in her office holding the sealed envelope from the Lagos Medical Genetics Laboratory. Her fingers trembled as she broke it open. She read the words once, twice, then a third time, though they never changed. Probability of paternity 99.9%. Chidi Okafor is the biological father of Ngozi Nwosu. Adanna's throat tightened. For a moment, all the steel in her melted. She pressed the paper against her chest and let out a small, shaky laugh that turned into a sob. My son, she whispered, you left a piece of yourself behind. But as quickly as it came, the softness vanished. Her expression hardened. That child is mine now. She picked up her phone. Barrister Kalu, she said, when her lawyer answered. Prepare the documents for custody transfer. On what grounds, madam? On the grounds that the mother is unfit. She's homeless, unstable, incapable of providing for the child. The lawyer hesitated. Madam, unless there is evidence of neglect, then find it, Adanna snapped. Or create it. I don't care. That child belongs in the Okafor house. When she ended the call, she stared out the window at the Lagos skyline. The city gleamed beneath her like a kingdom she ruled. But deep inside, something uneasy twisted in her chest. Her reflection in the glass looked older, lonelier. Down below, Amara sat in a crowded shelter room with Ngozi asleep in her lap. She smiled faintly as she looked at her daughter's peaceful face. Maybe this time things will get better, she whispered. Maybe that woman will really help us. She didn't know that far above the city, under chandeliers and polished marble, a storm was already forming, quiet, deliberate, and deadly. Because Madam Adanna Okafor, the woman who had conquered Lagos's skyline, had just declared a new war, one not fought for power, but for possession. And this time, her battlefield was a child's future. The following morning, the city of Lagos woke under a heavy haze, smoke rising from roadside suya, grills, horns echoing like restless drums, the smell of diesel and impatience clinging to every street. Inside the Okafor mansion, however, all was quiet, too quiet. Madam Adanna Okafor stood by the grand window of her study, the one overlooking Victoria Island's skyline. She wore a crisp ivory blouse, her posture sharp, her face a perfect sculpture of control. But beneath that calm surface, a storm raged. She had read the DNA report again that morning, tracing every letter as if searching for a loophole that didn't exist. 99.9% certainty. There was no denying it now. Ngozi was her son's child. Her only grandchild. The last living fragment of Chidi. For a moment, Adanna allowed herself a memory. She usually buried Chidi at 10, running barefoot through their compound, laughing as he chased kites. "Mama, higher! Watch me fly it higher!" He had been everything bright and alive that her money could never buy. Then came the bitter aftertaste of loss. And now his child grows up begging on the streets. She picked up her phone and called Barrister Kalu. "Is it done?" The lawyer's calm voice came through. "The custody petition is drafted, madam, but as I mentioned, the court requires evidence that the mother is unfit." Unless I give them something to see," she interrupted, her tone cutting like a blade. "Do whatever it takes. That child will not waste her life in gutters and soup lines." Kalu sighed quietly. "As you wish." Adanna ended the call, then sat in silence, tapping one manicured finger against her desk. Across town, Amara Nwosu was hurrying down the damp streets of Ebute Meta, a plastic bag of school shoes swinging from her arm. The sun beat down hard already, and traffic fumes filled her lungs. But despite the exhaustion, she smiled. For the first time in years, she dared to feel hope. After the DNA test, Madam Okafor had spoken to her differently, almost kindly. She'd even promised to arrange better schooling for Ngozi. "I can't believe it," Amara whispered to herself. "Maybe God really heard me." At the shelter, Ngozi ran into her arms. "Mama, I drew something for Grandma Adanna." Amara froze. "Grandma Adanna." The name felt strange, heavy with both danger and destiny. "Oh, my baby," she said softly, stroking the girl's cheek. "That's sweet. I'm sure she'll like it." But deep inside, her instincts stirred uneasily. That evening, while Ngozi slept curled up beside her, Amara pulled out her old phone and scrolled through Chidi's pictures, their laughter frozen in time. She remembered how gentle he had been, how he always said, "Love can survive anything, Amara, even my mother." Her eyes filled with tears. "You were wrong, Chidi," she whispered. "Your mother doesn't forgive. She conquers." Meanwhile, Adanna's loyal investigator Emeka had been busy. He sat in his car across from the shelter, camera ready. He watched Amara come and go, carrying laundry, buying bread, walking Ngozi to school. There was nothing scandalous about her life, just poverty wrapped in dignity. That, of course, wasn't enough for Madam Okafor. When Emeka returned to the mansion with his report, Adanna flipped through it impatiently. "You found nothing, madam? She's clean? No criminal record, no drugs, no history of abuse." Adanna's lips thinned. "Then make her look otherwise. There must be something, a photo, a rumor, a witness. People will believe what they see." "Madam," Emeka hesitated, lowering his gaze. "With respect, she's not a bad woman. You saw the child. She's healthy, polite, well-behaved." Maybe enough. Adanna's voice cut through the air like a whip. "You think I'm doing this for myself? I'm doing this for Chidi's bloodline. For that child's future." "Yes, madam." Emeka bowed his head ashamed. But that night when he was alone in his car, he sat for a long time, staring at the picture of Ngozi holding her mother's hand. Something about the child's bright smile disturbed him. This woman isn't unfit. She's simply poor. He sighed, started his engine, and drove off into the night, praying silently for forgiveness. The next morning, Adanna put on her mask of compassion and called Amara. "My dear, I've been thinking," she began sweetly. "Ngozi deserves stability, a proper home, good schooling, even a trust fund. I can arrange all of it, but I need your cooperation." Amara, still wary but grateful, asked, "What must I do? Come to the Okafor Tower tomorrow at noon. Bring Ngozi. I'll introduce you to my lawyer, Barrister Kalu. We'll discuss formal guardianship papers just so everything is clear in the eyes of the law." "Guardianship," Amara frowned. "You mean shared custody?" "Exactly," Adanna said smoothly. "You'll remain her mother, of course, but this way she'll have access to all her father's inheritance." Amara hesitated, then nodded slowly. If it's for Ngozi's future, I'll come. Adanna smiled to herself. Perfect. The next day, the meeting took place in Adanna's glass-walled office overlooking the lagoon. The contrast was brutal, Amara in her faded brown dress, Ngozi clutching her hand standing before golden drapes, and a table that could pay for a lifetime of rent. Welcome, Adanna said warmly, offering tea. Ngozi, darling, come here. The little girl stepped forward shyly. Adanna knelt, forcing a smile. You're very pretty, just like your father. Ngozi smiled uncertainly. Mama says I have his eyes. Adanna's heart clenched, but not with love, with pride mixed with possession. You do, she said softly. And those eyes deserve to see the world, not the inside of shelters. Barrister Kalu cleared his throat and handed Amara a folder. If you sign these preliminary documents, Madam Okafor can immediately enroll your daughter in an international school and open an educational trust. Amara frowned, flipping through the papers. The legal jargon blurred together, but one phrase caught her attention. Temporary custody transfer. What does this mean? She asked, her voice trembling. Nothing alarming, Kalu said smoothly. It's just to simplify the school admissions and financial arrangements. It's reversible anytime. Amara hesitated, fingers shaking. I don't understand all this law talk. Maybe I should get someone to read it first. Adanna's eyes narrowed for a second, but she quickly softened her tone. Of course, my dear. Take your time. I only want to help. But remember, school enrollment deadlines are next week. I'd hate for Ngozi to miss the opportunity. The weight of that sentence pressed down hard. Amara thought of her daughter's dreams, her drawings, her endless questions about school. Slowly, painfully, she signed. Adanna smiled and reached out, taking the pen like a queen, sealing victory. You've done the right thing. Chidi would be proud. As Amara and Ngozi left, the little girl turned back and waved. Bye, Grandma Adanna. Adanna waved back, her smile tight and perfect. The moment the elevator doors closed, she turned to Barrister Kalu. File the custody motion tomorrow. She won't know what hit her. Madam the lawyer warned this could get ugly. The courts don't take kindly to deceit. Adanna's gaze hardened. I've spent my whole life turning ugly into power. Do as I say. That night, the rain returned. Amara stood outside the shelter, staring at the city lights. Her stomach churned. Something about the meeting felt wrong, the way Adanna looked at Ngozi, like she was claiming her, not helping her. She whispered into the wind, Chidi, if you can hear me, protect our child. Miles away in the Okafor mansion, Adanna stood before the same window, lightning flashing across her face. She sipped her wine slowly, her eyes cold. Forgive me, my son, she murmured. But I will not let your child grow up like her mother. The Okafor name deserves better. Outside, thunder roared like a warning neither woman could yet understand. The war for Ngozi's future had begun. 3 days later, Lagos was drowning in sunlight, but the heat brought no comfort. The air buzzed with the sound of generators, and the Okafor mansion glowed like a diamond cage in the middle of Victoria Island. Inside, Madam Adanna stood before the mirror in her silk robe, her face expressionless as she fastened a gold necklace around her throat. She had not slept since Amara signed the papers. Not out of guilt, she refused to name it that, but because her mind wouldn't rest. Each night she heard echoes of Chidi's voice, faint as wind, through the hallways. Mama, you can't control everything. She would wake clutching her pillow like it was his hand, then whisper back into the darkness, watch me. That morning, Barrister Kalu arrived at her office with a polished briefcase and a look that made him seem older than his years. Madam, he said carefully, I filed the custody petition. The court hearing will be next Friday. But there's a risk. Adanna looked up from her paperwork. What risk the judge assigned is known for siding with mothers. He will demand clear evidence that Amara is unfit. If we can't provide it, you could lose your case before it begins. She sipped her coffee calmly. Then we'll give him evidence. Kalu hesitated. What kind of evidence? The kind that convinces, she said, simply setting her cup down with a soft click. Outside the city pulsed buses, honking vendors, shouting the living chaos of Lagos spinning beneath her tower. But inside, Adanna's world was organized, precise. She ruled it the way she ruled everything, by removing what stood in her way. Across town, Amara was humming softly while folding Ngozi's clothes. Her daughter danced around the small shelter room, her little voice bright as morning bells. Mama, Madam Adanna said, I'll go to a big school soon. She said, I'll wear a uniform. Amara smiled, though her stomach twisted. We'll see, my baby. Big schools come with big rules. Ngozi laughed, spinning in circles until she nearly tripped. Then I'll follow every rule. Amara caught her, hugging her tightly. You already make me proud. But later, as Ngozi napped, Amara pulled out the guardianship paper again. Her eyes lingered on the legal words she didn't understand. Custody transfer under review, best interest of the child. Something about it felt wrong. The way Adanna had rushed her, the way the lawyer avoided eye contact. She decided she would go to the courthouse the next day to ask someone what she'd really signed. That night, as she locked the shelter door behind her to buy bread, a man approached her, thin, polite, with a familiar voice. "Miss Nosu," "Yes," he held out a folded envelope. "Court summons, ma'am. You've been served." Her heart stopped. Court? What court? The man gave a short bow and left before she could ask again. With shaking hands, she tore the envelope open under the streetlight. Her eyes darted over the words, "Petition for custody transfer, filed by Madam Adanna Okafor." Her breath caught in her throat. The letter slipped from her hands, fluttering into a puddle. "Oh God," she whispered. "She lied to me." At that very hour in the Okafor mansion, Adanna was standing by her piano looking at Chidi's photograph. A storm of emotions flickered across her face, love, anger, justification. "Your daughter will thank me one day," she murmured. "She'll never know hunger, never sleep in fear. I'm saving her." But deep down, another voice whispered, "You're saving yourself from shame." She pushed it away. The next few days were chaos for Amara. She tried to find help, but every lawyer she approached wanted money she didn't have. "Come back when you can pay a retainer," they said. By the fourth rejection, she sat on a bus stop bench, her hands trembling in her lap. Ngozi sat beside her, swinging her legs. "Mama, are you okay?" Amara forced a smile. "Yes, baby." Just thinking. But tears burned her eyes. She whispered, "What kind of world punishes a mother for being poor?" An old woman selling groundnuts overheard her. "My daughter," she said kindly, "when the rich go to war, the poor must find angels. Don't give up, pray. God still watches." That night, Amara knelt beside Ngozi's bed, whispering a prayer through clenched teeth. "God, if you gave me this child, then don't let them take her away." When the court date arrived, the courthouse in Ikeja was crowded and humid. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and cheap perfume. Adanna arrived first, surrounded by her lawyers and assistants, her pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Amara came alone, wearing her best faded dress, holding Ngozi's hand. People turned to stare, the queen and the beggar, two worlds colliding. Judge Adebayo entered his robe, swaying like a slow tide. "This court will determine custody of the minor child, Ngozi Nwosu," he announced. Barrister Kalu stood. "Your Honor, the petitioner, Madam Adanna Okafor, wishes to assume full custody on the grounds that the child's current guardian is homeless, unemployed, and unable to provide a stable environment." Amara's eyes widened. "That's not true," she shouted before the judge raised his hand for silence. "You'll have your turn, madam," he said sternly. Then Kalu began presenting photographs of Amara washing clothes outside the shelter, Ngozi walking barefoot in the mud, and old police records showing Amara once fined for street vending without a license. Adanna didn't look at her. She only stared straight ahead, hands clasped tightly, jaw clenched. When it was Amara's turn, she stood trembling before the judge. "My lord, I may be poor, but I love my child. She eats before I do. She sleeps while I work. I would die before I hurt her. Is that not what makes a mother?" The courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked moved. But Kalu pressed forward. "Love is admirable, Your Honor, but poverty creates danger. We have reports from the shelter showing missed school days, unpaid fees, and unstable living conditions. The child deserves better." Amara's knees nearly gave out. Ngozi reached for her hand, whispering, "Mama, it's okay." Judge Adebayo sighed heavily. "This is not an easy decision. The child's welfare must come first. Madam Okafor has resources to provide safety and education. However, please," Amara interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "She promised to help me not steal my child. Please." But the judge looked away. Temporary custody is granted to Madam Adanna Okafor until further review. The gavel struck like thunder. Amara screamed, "No!" Ngozi cried, clinging to her. "Mama!" Court officers tried to separate them, but Amara fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around the child. "You can't take her. She's my life." Adanna turned her back. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's for her good." Outside the courthouse, reporters flashed cameras. Madam Okafor, any comment on the case? She simply said, "A child belongs where she can flourish." Behind her, a police van carried Amara away for disturbing the peace. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, some in awe, others in disgust. That evening, as rain poured again over Lagos, Adanna sat beside Ngozi in the mansion's guest room. The child stared blankly at her new toys, stuffed bears, golden dolls, shiny shoes. "Where's my mommy?" she asked in a small voice. Adanna forced a smile. She's sick, my dear. She went to a place where doctors will help her get better. Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. When will she come back? Adanna hesitated. Soon, but for now you'll stay with Grandma Adanna. We'll take care of you. Ngozi began to cry quietly, her small hands clutching the bear. I want my mommy. Adanna looked away, her chest tightening. For a fleeting moment, she almost reached out to comfort the girl, but she stopped. Attachment is weakness, she reminded herself. Discipline will heal her faster. When she left the room, her reflection followed her down the marble hallway, beautiful, composed, but empty. In the guest room, Ngozi sobbed herself to sleep, whispering into her pillow, Mama, please come back. And somewhere in the rain-soaked city behind the bars of a holding cell, Amara whispered the same words, Ngozi, my baby, I'll come for you, no matter how long it takes. The storm outside raged on, washing over the Okafor estate and the city below, as if heaven itself was mourning the cost of one woman's pride. Night hung over Lagos like a restless beast, heavy with thunder and secrets. Inside the Okafor mansion, the golden lamps glowed softly against the rain-streaked windows. Madam Adanna Okafor stood in her study, her reflection flickering against the glass as lightning flashed outside. In her hand was a glass of red wine, in her chest a victory that tasted strangely hollow. She had won. The court had ruled in her favor. Ngozi was now legally in her custody. And yet, even as the rain drummed on the roof, she could still hear the echo of the little girl's cries in the courtroom. Mama, please don't let them take me. Adanna's hand trembled. She set the glass down and pressed a palm against her temple. Enough, she whispered to herself. Feelings are for the weak. Down the hall, Ngozi sat on her new bed in her new silk pajamas, her eyes wide and empty. The room was enormous, painted pink, filled with expensive dolls, books, a mountain of toys. But it felt like a cage of glass. She clutched the small cloth doll her mother had sewn for her, its one button eye loose, and whispered into the dark. Mama said love makes us safe. Why am I not safe now? Meanwhile, at the police station in Yaba, Amara Nwosu sat on a wooden bench soaked to the bone, her wrists still red from the handcuffs. Her mind was a blur of disbelief. One moment she was holding her child, the next officers were pulling her away as if she were a criminal. She hadn't eaten all day. Her hair stuck to her face, her heart to her ribs. How did it all turn so wrong? A uniformed officer approached her cell. You have visitor. Amara lifted her head slowly and froze. It was Adanna standing behind the metal bars, her umbrella dripping, her diamond earrings gleaming like shards of lightning. You, Amara breathed, her voice cracking. Why are you here? Adanna didn't flinch. To make you understand, she said calmly, you've lost the case. The court has decided. Ngozi is with me now. She'll be safe, educated, loved. Loved. Amara's laugh was bitter, broken. You call this love? You stole her from me. You lied. You said you'd help. I did help, Adanna said, her tone icy. You gave birth to her, but I will raise her. That's the difference between a woman who struggles and one who provides. Amara stepped closer, gripping the bars. You think money makes you a mother? You think buying her toys will erase me? Adanna's eyes hardened. In time, yes. The silence stretched like a blade between them. Then Amara whispered, you'll regret this, Madam Okafor. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day you'll look into that child's eyes and see me staring back. Adanna's expression flickered anger, pain, perhaps even fear, but she quickly smoothed it away. Goodbye, Amara, she said softly. You've already lost everything. She turned and walked away, her heels echoing like gunshots down the hall. The next week blurred into routine. Ngozi began attending one of Lagos's most prestigious international schools. Her teachers called her bright but distant. She rarely spoke, rarely smiled. When asked about her parents, she would look down and whisper, my mommy's gone. At home, Adanna tried to fill the silence with order. She made sure the girl's schedule was perfect. Piano lessons, private tutors, etiquette training. She told herself she was building strength, discipline, refinement. But one night, when she checked Ngozi's room, she found the girl asleep on the floor beside the bed, holding the ragged doll her mother made. Tears had dried on her cheeks. Adanna knelt down and touched her hair gently. For the first time in years, she felt something soften. My poor child, she whispered. You'll understand one day why I did this. But deep down, the old woman's heart was restless. Power couldn't silence guilt. Months turned into years. In the noisy streets of Lagos, people forgot the scandal. The Okafor name glittered again, untarnished. Madam Adanna became a legend of discipline and wealth. Her granddaughter, a quiet prodigy. But behind the city's lights, Amara's life sank deeper into darkness. Her public defender had failed to clear her name. The planted evidence, the stolen 200,000 from the diner, was proof enough for a quick conviction. The judge called it petty theft, but her unstable life made it worse. She was sentenced to 20 years. 20 years. The courtroom blurred. She barely heard the words. Her knees gave out and she fell screaming as the guards dragged her away. The last thing she saw was Adanna standing in the back face, still eyes cold. "You monster," she shouted through tears. "You took everything from me." Adanna turned and walked out before the guards silenced her. Prison was another kind of storm. The air smelled of rust and despair. The days blended into one another, gray uniforms, hard labor, tasteless food. But even there, Amara refused to break. Every night she wrote letters to Ngozi, hundreds of them, letters she knew might never be read. She wrote about love, about the moon, about forgiveness. She wrote her daughter's name again and again, as if repeating it might bridge the years. In her bunk, she whispered prayers. "God, keep her heart soft. Don't let them turn her into me." Once a month, she heard rumors about the outside world, about the Okafor family, about the little girl growing into a fine young student. Each story pierced her heart, but also gave her hope. At least she's alive. At least she's safe. Still, every night she dreamed of the moment she'd walk free, even if she had to crawl to her daughter's doorstep. 15 years passed. In the Okafor mansion, Ngozi had become a young woman, elegant, brilliant, and haunted. She had her grandmother's posture, her father's eyes, and a voice that carried quiet authority. But she rarely smiled. At 18, she won scholarships, awards, invitations to international schools, but behind every applause, she felt a strange emptiness, as if someone else's voice was missing from her story. Sometimes she'd find herself staring at the old cloth doll she kept hidden under her pillow. The seams were loose, the colors faded, but it smelled faintly of warmth, like hands that had once loved her more than life itself. When she asked Adanna once, "Grandma, what was my mother like?" Adanna froze her spoon halfway to her lips. "Your mother, yes," Ngozi said softly. "You said she was sick. Did she get better?" Adanna's throat tightened. She forced a smile. She passed away, dear, long ago." Before you could remember, Ngozi nodded slowly, but something in her chest twisted. That night, she dreamt of a woman's voice singing a lullaby she didn't know, but somehow remembered. Back in prison, the years carved Amara into something unbreakable. Her hair had streaks of gray now, her hands calloused, but her eyes burned with the same fierce light. When a new inmate asked, "What keeps you alive here?" she answered simply, "Love. The kind that outlives time." She spent her final years teaching literacy to other inmates, saving bits of her meager wages from sewing uniforms. When the warden told her she would be released early for good behavior, she fell to her knees. 20 years had nearly passed. She had lost her youth, her freedom, her dignity, but not her hope. As she stepped out of the prison gates, one hot afternoon, clutching a worn bag and 15000, the sun blinded her. But she smiled. "I'm coming, my baby," she whispered. "I'm coming for you." And somewhere across the city, in a corner of a mansion too big for its silence, a young woman looked out the window, her heart stirring with a longing she couldn't name. The story was far from over. Because love, no matter how buried, always finds its way back to the light. The city roared with life. As dawn broke over Lagos, the hum of Okada's vendors, shouting about bread Nakara preachers, already calling for salvation through battered loudspeakers. But Amara Nwosu barely noticed. The bus rattled beneath her as it crossed the third mainland bridge, wind tearing through the open windows. She clutched her small canvas bag, everything she owned after 20 years in prison. Her reflection in the glass startled her. The once bright young woman was gone. In her place stood someone lean-lined but unbroken. Her eyes still carried that stubborn fire, the same one Chidi once said he loved. 20 years, she whispered, watching the skyline rise ahead, glittering with towers she had cleaned in her youth. 20 years they stole from me, but not my love. The bus jerked to a stop. The driver yelled, "Oshodi." Last stop, Amara stepped off her knees, trembling slightly. Freedom felt unreal. The air was thick with diesel fumes and possibility. She had no family, no home, no name that anyone wanted to remember, but she had a purpose to find her daughter. She spent the next few weeks living in a small rented room near Yaba Market, sleeping on a thin mat, taking any work she could find. She scrubbed floors, washed uniforms, cleaned restaurants, anything that paid a few naira. Every day after work, she walked the city asking questions in whispers. "Do you know the Okafor family?" she asked one shopkeeper. The woman's eyes widened. Everyone knows Madam Adanna Okafor, the queen of real estate, owns half of Victoria Island. Does she have a granddaughter? Of course, Miss Ngozi Okafor. Runs a marketing company now. Very successful. Amara's heart pounded. My little girl, she's grown. That night she cried for the first time in years, not from pain, but from hope. On the other side of the city, Ngozi Okafor stepped out of a sleek silver car in front of a mirrored tower that bore her company's name, Okafor Media Solutions. At 26, she was one of the youngest CEOs in Lagos. Her dark curls were pinned neatly, her gray suit sharp, her heels clicking with quiet authority. Everyone respected her, her clients, her staff, even her grandmother who still ruled their mansion like a ghost of power. But behind that poised exterior, Ngozi carried a quiet ache she could never explain. Sometimes she caught her reflection and didn't recognize herself. Sometimes when she saw mothers walking their children to school, something inside her cracked. Madam, her secretary called, breaking her thoughts. We've just hired a new janitor. She'll start tomorrow. Ngozi nodded absently. Fine. Make sure she gets orientation. That night she visited Madam Adanna, now older, slower, but still elegant as marble. The mansion smelled of lilies and old perfume. My child, Adanna said with a tired smile. You're running an empire now. Chidi would be proud. Ngozi smiled faintly, sitting beside her. I try, Grandma. Adanna studied her face. You look tired. I'm fine. Just busy. Adanna reached for her hand. You've done well. Never let weakness guide you, Ngozi. The world belongs to those who control it. Ngozi nodded, but her heart whispered another truth. Control feels like a cage. She looked around the vast, silent room filled with portraits of her father and grandmother. Grandma, she asked softly, did my mother ever write to me? Adanna froze. The question sliced through the air. Your mother, she repeated slowly. Yes. I found this. Ngozi pulled out a yellowed envelope she had discovered weeks earlier inside an old chest. It was burned at the edges, half the writing gone, but the first words remained. My dearest Ngozi, even if I cannot hold you, my love will never leave you. Adanna's face hardened. That's nothing but old nonsense. Throw it away! But it's her handwriting, isn't it? Ngozi pressed. You said she was gone long ago. How could she write this? Adanna stood abruptly, her cane striking the marble. Enough! You don't understand how cruel life was to that woman. She wasn't fit to be your mother. I did what I had to do. Ngozi looked at her grandmother. This woman who had built empires yet spoke of love like it was poison, and felt a chill spread through her. Later that night, alone in her apartment, she read the letter again, tracing the shaky ink with her fingers. The words, blurred as tears she didn't expect, filled her eyes. Who were you? She whispered. And why does your voice feel like mine? The next morning, the cleaning staff arrived early at the Okafor Media Tower. Among them was a new face, a thin woman with streaks of gray in her hair, her uniform too large, her eyes tired but bright. Amara. She stood in the lobby, mop in hand, staring up at the glass walls. Her heart beat faster as she read the golden letters above the reception desk. OK for Media Solutions. Her breath caught. Ngozi. Every nerve in her body trembled. My baby built this. She wiped her eyes quickly before the supervisor noticed. You new woman, he barked. Don't just stand there. Start with the elevator mirrors. Yes, sir, she whispered, pushing her cart forward. All morning she cleaned floors, emptied bins, and polished glass. And then around 10, the elevator doors opened and she saw her. Ngozi stepped out, elegant and radiant, phone in hand, eyes focused ahead. Amara froze. Her breath hitched like she'd been struck. It was Chidi's walk. Chidi's smile. Her daughter's face, a mix of both of them, grown and powerful. Her hands trembled. She turned quickly, pretending to mop, but her tears fell onto the marble. Annie, are you okay? Another cleaner whispered. Amara nodded. Just dust in my eyes. But her heart was no longer steady. She's alive. She's here. My baby. Later that day, while polishing the glass doors, Amara watched Ngozi pass again. Their eyes met for a second. And in that instant, something happened. Ngozi blinked, startled by the strange warmth that washed over her. The cleaner's face was unfamiliar, but something in her eyes felt hauntingly known, like a dream she had been chasing her entire life. Good morning, Ma, Amara said, softly bowing her head. Ngozi hesitated, then smiled politely. Good morning. Her voice, it sounded like music Amara hadn't heard in 20 years. When the elevator doors closed, Amara leaned against her cart, tears silently falling. Thank you, God, she whispered. You didn't let me die before seeing her. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She replayed the moment again and again, the look in Ngozi's eyes, the faint smile, the unspoken recognition. But fear crept in. If Adanna finds out I'm here, she shuddered, remembering cold marble floors and diamond earrings behind courtroom glass. No, she told herself. Not yet. For now she would stay silent, watch, wait. Let her daughter feel her presence again before the truth shattered everything. But deep inside, she knew time was not her friend. Because secrets, especially old ones, don't stay buried forever. And somewhere in her grand mansion, Madam Adanna Okafor was already feeling a disturbance she couldn't explain. She woke in the middle of the night, heart pounding, a whisper echoing in her dreams. "Mama, I'm coming for my child." The thunder rolled outside, distant but certain, like a promise long overdue. Morning arrived with a shimmer of gold on the Lagos lagoon, but Ngozi Okafor felt none of its beauty. Her head throbbed with exhaustion after another sleepless night. The letter she had found, the one written in trembling handwriting and signed, "Your mother Amara," haunted her dreams. She didn't know what bothered her more, the fact that her grandmother had hidden it, or the strange ache she felt when she whispered that unfamiliar name. Amara. It rolled off her tongue like something buried deep in her blood. At 7 a.m., she arrived early at the office tower she had built from ambition and grit. As usual, she was first through the doors, clutching her coffee, already scrolling through emails. The cleaners were finishing their rounds, and then she saw her again, the new woman. The cleaner with silver streaks in her hair and a soft, kind face. The same woman whose eyes yesterday had filled Ngozi with an inexplicable warmth. Amara was wiping down the glass table near the lobby, humming quietly to herself, an old lullaby that had somehow survived 20 years of pain. Ngozi stopped walking. That melody, it made something flicker in her chest, like a memory that wasn't quite a memory, a rhythm she shouldn't know but did. She stepped closer. "Excuse me," she said gently. Amara straightened, immediately startled. "Good morning, Ma." Ngozi smiled. "You were humming a song. What was it?" Amara's heart skipped. "Oh, just something my mother used to sing. It helps me work." Ngozi nodded slowly. It sounded familiar. Strange. Amara forced a small laugh, though tears pricked her eyes. "Maybe your mother sang it too." The words hung between them like fragile glass. For a moment they just looked at each other, one searching, the other hiding, and the air felt thick with recognition neither could explain. Ngozi finally broke the silence. "What's your name, Amara?" she whispered. Ngozi blinked. Her breath caught. The same name from the letter. "Amara," she repeated softly, tasting it like a key turning in a locked door. "That's beautiful." Amara lowered her gaze. "Thank you, Ma." Something in Ngozi's chest tightened. She wanted to ask more, but her phone buzzed, her grandmother calling. She excused herself quickly, unaware that the old woman's voice on the other end would soon shatter her fragile sense of calm. At the mansion, Madam Adanna Okafor sat on her balcony, sipping tea and watching the gardeners prune her roses. Her health had begun to falter, high blood pressure, fatigue, but her mind remained razor sharp. The empire she built was stable, yet she felt an odd chill lately, as though ghosts were walking the earth again. When Ngozi answered the call, Adanna wasted no time with greetings. "My child, listen carefully. There's a rumor going around about your company." Ngozi frowned. "What rumor?" "That someone on your staff has been spreading lies about your family. About me. About your late father." Ngozi sighed. "Grandma, not this again. Every few months you think someone's out to ruin us." "This is different," Adanna said coldly. "One of my former associates mentioned the name Amara. Does that sound familiar to you?" Ngozi froze. "Amara, yes." "She was Chidi's." Adanna stopped herself, realizing she had said too much. "Never mind. Just promise me you'll stay away from anyone by that name." Ngozi's voice was quiet but sharp. "Why?" Because Adanna said, her tone trembling, some wound should never be reopened. Before Ngozi could reply, Adanna hung up. Down in the lobby, Amara leaned against her cleaning cart, her knees weak. She had overheard part of the call, just enough to know her name was now a danger. She knows. Fear rippled through her. Memories came flooding back, the gavel's strike. Adanna's cold stare, the police dragging her away, while Ngozi screamed. She gripped the edge of her cart until her knuckles whitened. "No," she whispered. "Not this time. She won't destroy us again." That evening, as the building emptied and the city lights began to glitter, Amara lingered by the elevator. When Ngozi stepped out of her office looking weary, Amara gathered her courage. "Ma," she said softly. "Forgive me for asking, but are you all right?" Ngozi sighed. "Just tired. Too many secrets in this world, you know. Amara nodded. Sometimes the truth hides to protect itself, but it always finds a way to breathe. Ngozi looked at her intrigued. You sound like my grandmother when she's being poetic. I doubt she and I speak the same language of pain, Amara said quietly. Something in her tone made Ngozi pause. She sat on one of the lobby benches. Can I tell you something strange? Of course, Ma. I found a letter recently from someone named Amara. It said she loved me, that she never stopped loving me. My grandmother says it's nonsense, but Ngozi's voice broke slightly. When I look at you, I feel that same warmth, like I've known you forever. Amara's heart nearly stopped. Her fingers twitched toward Ngozi before she caught herself. That's a beautiful thing, Ma, she whispered. Sometimes love remembers even when people forget. Tears blurred her eyes. She turned quickly, pretending to clean. Ngozi stood suddenly overwhelmed. Thank you, Amara, she said, and left. When the elevator doors closed, Amara pressed her palms over her face and sobbed silently. The next morning, Adanna's chauffeur found her pacing the marble foyer, her cane clacking with fury. Madam, what is wrong? He asked. Someone told me, she hissed, that a woman named Amara has been seen at Ngozi's company, cleaning floors. Her voice trembled, not with weakness but with rage. She was supposed to rot in prison. She snatched her phone. Emeka, she barked, calling her old investigator. Find out if that woman is really back. If it's her, I want her gone. Do you hear me, Gone? That same day, Amara received a folded note in her locker at work. Be careful. People are watching you. There was no name. Her hands shook. She knew exactly who it was from. That evening, as she prepared to leave, she felt that prickling at the back of her neck. She turned. A black Mercedes sat parked near the loading dock, engine running. Behind its tinted window, she caught a glimpse of a silhouette, a woman in pearls, Adanna. Their eyes met for the briefest second. Amara froze, then quickly ducked into the stairwell, her pulse hammering. She pressed her back against the cold concrete, breathing hard. I won't run, she whispered to herself. Not this time. The next morning, Ngozi noticed Amara wasn't at her usual spot. Concern tugged at her chest. She went down to the maintenance office. Where's the new cleaner? The supervisor shrugged. Didn't show up. Maybe she quit. Ngozi frowned. That didn't sound right. She took the elevator to the lobby, half expecting to see Amara's gentle smile waiting behind the mop bucket. But the space was empty. For some reason, her eyes filled with tears. Back at her desk, she found an envelope resting on her chair. There was no name, but her heart knew whose hands had written it. She opened it carefully. Inside, in neat handwriting, were the words, My dear child, some truths are dangerous, but lies are worse. If you ever feel that your heart knows something your mind cannot explain, trust the heart. It remembers what the world tries to erase. Ngozi pressed the note to her chest, trembling. She didn't understand everything yet, but she knew that something in her life had been built on a lie, and the woman who might hold the truth had just vanished. As she looked out at the city skyline, clouds gathering again, she whispered, Amara, who are you to me? And somewhere in the streets below, Amara whispered the same question through her tears. Ngozi, will you remember me before it's too late? Above them, thunder cracked like a warning. The past was no longer content to stay buried. Rain washed over Lagos that evening, turning the city's neon lights into trembling rivers of color. The storm rumbled above as if heaven itself was preparing for a confession long overdue. Ngozi Okafor sat in her car outside the family mansion, her wipers beating in rhythm with her pulse. The letter from Amara lay open on the passenger seat, ink slightly smudged by the rain she had walked through while holding it. Trust the heart. It remembers what the world tries to erase. She had read that line 100 times, and every time something inside her ached like a melody she once knew but had forgotten the words to. Finally, she stepped out of the car, clutching the letter tightly. Tonight, she would get answers. Inside, the house was dim. The lights glowed softly against the marble floor. Madam Adanna Okafor sat by the fire in her long silk robe, a cup of tea trembling in her hands. The years had thinned her hair and curved her spine, but her eyes, sharp, cold, commanding, still ruled every inch of the room. Grandma Ngozi said, her voice firm. Adanna looked up slowly. Ngozi, it's late. What's wrong? Ngozi placed the letter on the table between them. I found this on my desk this morning. Adanna's gaze flicked to the paper. Her knuckles whitened around the cup. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter where. What matters is who wrote it. Tell me the truth, Grandma. Who is Amara? Adanna inhaled sharply. That woman again. She's nothing. A ghost from the past who's trying to poison your mind. Ngozi's voice hardened. Then why does her handwriting match the letter I found weeks ago? Why do you always change the subject when I ask about my mother? Why does everyone in this city know your name but no one remembers hers? Adanna stood abruptly, her cane clattering against the floor. Enough, she shouted, her voice echoing through the grand hall. You don't know what you're asking, child. I'm not a child, Ngozi snapped back. I'm the woman you raised to find truth, even if it hurts. So tell me, who is she? For a long, tense moment, the only sound was the rain against the windows. Then Adanna sank slowly back into her chair. She was trouble, she said finally. A waitress your father met in a cheap diner. She had nothing, no family, no money, no class. I warned him. I told him she would destroy him. Ngozi's heart pounded. My father loved her, didn't he? Adanna's lips tightened. He was young, foolish. Love makes fools of everyone. He thought he could build a life with her until I stopped him. Ngozi's voice trembled. Stopped him how? Adanna met her eyes unblinking. By reminding him who he was. By protecting this family. By protecting you. Protecting me from what? From her, Adanna hissed. From a woman who dragged him away from everything he was meant to be. From a mother who would have let you grow up in filth. Ngozi felt the room tilt. My mother. Adanna froze. Ngozi's voice cracked. You said she died. She did, Adanna whispered. To us, she died the day she tried to take him from me. You lied to me, Ngozi said, her words trembling. All these years you made me believe I saved you, Adanna roared, slamming her hand on the table. You would have grown up in shelters on the streets begging for food. Instead, you went to the best schools, you built an empire. Everything you are, I gave you. Ngozi's tears fell silently. You gave me everything but the truth. Adanna turned away, her shoulders trembling. The truth would have destroyed you. No, Ngozi whispered. The lies did. She picked up the letter and walked out before her grandmother could stop her. The front door slammed, echoing through the house like a verdict. Across town, in a cramped apartment with peeling paint and a flickering light bulb, Amara Nwosu sat by the window watching the rain. Her chest felt tight. She had seen the black car parked outside the office earlier that day, the same one from years ago. Adanna's car. The past had found her again. She whispered a prayer under her breath, fingers trembling as she clutched the small, faded photograph she had kept all these years. Ngozi, only 6, laughing in her arms. God, please, she whispered. Don't let her hate me when she finds out. Her phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello. The voice on the other end was soft, uncertain. Amara, her breath caught. Ngozi's silence crackled like electricity between them. I need to see you, Ngozi said finally. Tonight. Amara closed her eyes, tears spilling freely now. Where Ngozi hesitated, her voice trembling. The old park in Surulere, by the jacaranda trees. I'll be there. The park was nearly empty when Amara arrived. The storm had quieted to a drizzle. The jacaranda trees shimmered in the dim streetlight, their violet petals scattered across the wet pavement like confetti from a forgotten celebration. Ngozi stood beneath one of the trees, her coat soaked, her eyes red from crying. When she saw Amara approaching, she froze. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ngozi whispered, It's you, isn't it? You're my mother. Amara's throat closed. She nodded. Yes, my baby. Ngozi's lip trembled. Why didn't you come for me? Why did you let me believe you were dead? Amara stepped closer, her hands trembling. I tried. Every day. But your grandmother, she lied. Ngozi interrupted, tears streaming down her cheeks. She told me you were gone, that you didn't want me. Amara reached out, cupping Ngozi's face. I wanted you more than life itself. They took you from me. They put me in prison for something I didn't do. I wrote you letters every month for 20 years. Ngozi's eyes widened. I never got them. I know, Amara whispered. She burned them. But I never stopped believing we'd meet again. Ngozi's sobs broke free as she threw her arms around her mother. Amara held her tightly, burying her face in her daughter's hair, breathing in the scent she dreamed of for 2 decades. For the first time in 20 years, they were whole again. The rain fell softly around them, washing away the years of lies. But neither saw the figure standing across the street under a black umbrella, Adanna, watching, her face pale and unreadable. Her hands shook not from anger, but from something far older. Guilt. As mother and daughter clung to each other, Adanna turned away, her reflection in the puddle breaking apart under the rain. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel powerful. She felt small. She had spent a lifetime building walls around her heart, and now she stood outside them alone. Later that night, in the quiet of her mansion, Adanna walked to her son Chidi's old study. She opened the dusty drawer and pulled out a yellowed photograph, Amara Chidi and baby Ngozi, smiling, radiant free. Tears slipped down her wrinkled cheeks. "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered to her late son. "But all I did was destroy what you loved most." She pressed the photo to her heart. Across town in Amara's small apartment, Ngozi sat beside her mother, holding her hand. "Tell me everything," she said softly. And so through the night, Amara did, about love, betrayal, prison, and the faith that kept her alive. When dawn finally came, Ngozi whispered, "You survived hell, Mama, but you never lost your grace." Amara smiled faintly, touching her daughter's cheek. "And you," she said, "are the proof that love can rise from ashes." Outside, the first light of morning broke through the storm clouds. But in the distance, at the Okafor mansion, another storm was already gathering, one that would test forgiveness, redemption, and the cost of truth. The first morning light poured through the curtains of Amara's small apartment, casting soft gold across the faded walls. The city below was already alive, buses, honking, vendors, shouting, but inside that quiet room, time itself seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in 20 years, Ngozi woke up beside her mother. She had fallen asleep on the couch, her head resting against Amara's shoulder, her hand still clutching the photograph of her as a baby in her mother's arms. When she stirred and opened her eyes, she saw Amara already awake, sitting by the window with her Bible open. "Good morning, Mama," Ngozi said softly, her voice still thick with sleep. Amara turned her smile gentle but weary. "Good morning, my love. Did you rest?" Ngozi nodded slowly. "I dreamed of a song, the one you used to hum." Amara chuckled faintly. "You used to fall asleep to it. Even when you were sick, that song was the only thing that calmed you." "I didn't know," Ngozi whispered. "I thought I made it up." Amara closed the Bible and crossed the room, kneeling beside her daughter. "There are some things love writes so deeply that even lies can't erase them." Tears welled in Ngozi's eyes. "Mama, I should have looked for you." "No," Amara said firmly. "You were a child. None of this was your fault." They embraced again, tighter this time. In that embrace, the years of separation dissolved into something pure and aching, a reunion written in heaven's ink. But peace, like dawn, never stays for long. Far across the city, the Okafor mansion sat in silence, its marble floors glistening with cold perfection. Madam Adanna Okafor hadn't slept all night. She had watched from her car as her granddaughter met the woman she had spent 2 decades burying beneath lies. Every word Amara spoke had echoed in Adanna's mind like a bell she couldn't silence. "You took her from me. You made her believe I was dead." Her chest tightened as she looked around the room filled with photographs of her power, her business awards, her properties, her late husband's portrait, but nowhere was love. Only ghosts of victories that meant nothing now. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Madam," her housekeeper said softly, "there's a man here to see you. Says his name is Amika." Adanna frowned. "Send him in." Moments later, her old investigator entered, gray-haired now, but still sharp-eyed. "Madam," he said, removing his cap, "you asked me to find that woman again." Adanna's hands gripped her cane. "And she's living in Surulere, small apartment near the old market. The girl Miss Ngozi spent the night there." Adanna's heart sank. "So she knows." Emeka hesitated. "I believe so, madam." For a long moment, Adanna said nothing. Her eyes moved to the portrait of her son Chidi, smiling alive in the picture as if mocking her. "Leave me," she said quietly. When the man was gone, she sat alone, trembling. What have I done? For years, she had justified everything, telling herself she was saving her son's legacy, protecting his child from poverty, preserving the family name. But now her empire felt like a tomb built over her own guilt. And the 2 people she had wronged most were alive together and beyond her control. Later that afternoon, Amara sat with Ngozi in a small roadside cafe. The smell of jollof rice and fried plantain filled the air, mingling with the laughter of strangers. It was a simple place, but to Ngozi it felt like paradise. "I can't believe I used to eat food like this," Ngozi said with a shy smile, scooping a bite of rice. "Grandma never allowed street food." Amara laughed, a sound so tender it made heads turn. "Then she's never known joy. You can't live without spice." Ngozi's phone buzzed on the table. The name flashing on the screen made her pause. "Grandma." Her chest tightened. Should I answer? Amara took her hand gently. "That's for you to decide. But be careful. Her guilt is not gone yet." Ngozi stared at the phone as it buzzed again and again before she finally pressed accept. "Grandma," she said cautiously. Ngozi Adanna's voice quivered. "My child, We need to talk. Please come home. Ngozi hesitated. Why? So you can lie again? No, Adanna whispered. So I can tell the truth. Ngozi looked at her mother. Amara nodded slowly. Go, she said softly. Hear her out. But remember, truth doesn't erase what's been done. Ngozi stood uncertain but resolute. I'll come back tonight, she promised. Amara smiled faintly. No matter what happens, remember this, you are loved. Nothing can take that from you again. The drive to the mansion felt longer than ever. Ngozi's heart thudded with every passing streetlight. When she arrived, she found Adanna waiting on the balcony, her cane beside her, her face pale and drawn. You look older, Ngozi said quietly. Adanna smiled sadly. Guilt does that. They sat across from each other in silence before Adanna finally spoke. When your father died, something in me broke. He was my only son. I thought losing him was punishment enough. But then I found out about Amara, about you living in shelters. I told myself I was saving you. Ngozi's voice was cold. By sending my mother to prison, Adanna's lips trembled. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I only wanted proof she was unfit. But one lie led to another, and soon it was too late to undo it. You destroyed her life, Ngozi said, her voice shaking, and you destroyed mine. Tears rolled down the old woman's cheeks. I know. For the first time in her life, Madam Adanna Okafor, the woman who had controlled everything, bowed her head in defeat. I came here tonight, Ngozi said softly, because I wanted to hear remorse. Not excuses. Adanna looked up, her eyes hollow. Then you have it. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I took from you what can never be returned. Ngozi swallowed hard. You can't undo what you did, Grandma. But maybe you can still do one thing right. Adanna frowned. What? Tell the world the truth. Clear my mother's name. The old woman hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. That would destroy my reputation. Our reputation. Ngozi stood. Then we have nothing more to say. She turned toward the door. Adanna's voice cracked. Ngozi, please don't walk away. I'm all alone. Ngozi looked back, tears streaming down her face. Now you know how she felt for 20 years. And then she left, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the empty hall like the ghost of justice. Hours later, Amara waited by the window, hands clasped, whispering prayers. When Ngozi finally returned, her eyes were red but calm. Did she tell you the truth? Amara asked. Yes, Ngozi said softly. And she begged me to stay. What did you do? I left. Amara's heart ached. That must have been hard. It was, Ngozi whispered, sitting beside her. But I chose peace over power. You once told me love remembers. I think it also forgives. But forgiveness doesn't mean staying in the same pain. Amara reached for her hand. You've become stronger than I ever was. Ngozi smiled through tears. No, Mama, I just became you. Outside, the first dry wind of evening swept through the city, rustling the trees, as if the universe itself was sighing in relief. Far away, Adanna sat alone in her mansion, staring at the empty chair across from her. In her lap lay a pen and paper. She began to write, not as a queen of business, but as a woman undone by truth. To whom it may concern, 20 years ago, I committed a crime against an innocent woman named Amara Nwosu. I stole her daughter, fabricated charges, and hid the truth from the world. Today I confess everything. She signed her name, Adanna Okafor, and placed the letter on her desk. Then for the first time in decades, she wept freely, unguarded, unpowerful human. At that same moment, in a tiny apartment filled with laughter and the smell of jollof rice, Amara and Ngozi prepared dinner together. No diamonds, no servants, no marble floors, just love. As they ate, Amara looked across the table and whispered, You see, my child, the truth always finds its way home. Ngozi smiled, eyes shining. Yes, Mama, and so did I. Outside, the moon rose high above Lagos, bright, forgiving, and full. The sun climbed slowly over Lagos, spilling light through clouds still heavy from the previous night's rain. A new day had come, but for Madam Adanna Okafor, it didn't feel new at all. The mansion that once pulsed with power and servants now felt like a mausoleum, silent except for the distant hum of the city she had ruled like a queen. Her confession letter lay open on the mahogany desk, the ink barely dry. She had read it 3 times since dawn. Each line felt like a wound and a healing all at once. I stole love and replaced it with control. I mistook fear for protection. I believed power could rewrite destiny. I was wrong. She folded the paper carefully, sealed it in an envelope, and addressed it to the Ministry of Justice, Lagos State. Then she picked up the phone and called her driver. Take me to Surulere, she said simply. In the small apartment across town, Amara was hanging washed clothes on the line outside her balcony, while Ngozi prepared breakfast inside fried yam eggs and steaming cups of milky tea. They had been living together for 2 months now, and every small routine felt like sacred ritual. When Ngozi called Mama, "Your tea's getting cold," Amara smiled to herself. That word Mama still filled her chest with wonder every time she heard it. She came inside, wiping her hands on a towel, and joined her daughter at the table. The radio played faintly in the background, a morning host chatting about politics and rain. Ngozi's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it and frowned. "It's her." Amara's face softened. "Your grandmother?" Ngozi nodded. "She's been calling every day since that night." "I haven't answered." Amara reached across the table, touching her daughter's hand. Sometimes silence is its own reply. But if your heart tells you to hear her, listen. Ngozi hesitated, then swiped to accept the call. "Hello." The voice on the other end was frail, cracked like dry paper. "Ngozi, my child." "Grandma, I need to see you. Both of you, please." Ngozi's brow furrowed. "Both of us, yes. You and your mother. There are things I must say face to face before it's too late." Amara's eyes met her daughter's. The air between them turned heavy. "All right," Ngozi said finally. "We'll come." The mansion loomed ahead like a monument to guilt. Its marble gates, once guarded by pride, now opened quietly at the touch of the driver's hand. Adanna was waiting in the garden, seated beneath the jacaranda tree that had survived every season since the day her son was born. The purple blossoms scattered across the grass, forming a carpet of memory. Amara stopped a few feet away, her breath shallow. Ngozi held her hand tightly, feeling the tremor in her mother's grip. "Thank you for coming," Adanna said softly. Her voice was no longer sharp. It was brittle, almost transparent. Amara's eyes narrowed. "You sent me to prison for 20 years. What could you possibly have left to say?" Adanna nodded slowly. "Everything I didn't say then. Everything I was too proud to admit." She gestured to the bench beside her. "Please sit." After a long pause, they did. For several moments, no one spoke. The city's distant noise filled the silence. The rumble of buses, the laughter of children, the wind rustling through the jacaranda branches. Adanna turned to Ngozi first. "I wanted to build you into someone who could never be hurt, never be poor, never be broken. But in trying to make you strong, I took away the one thing that gives strength: love." Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted your empire, Grandma. I just wanted honesty." Adanna looked down at her, shaking hands. "And you, Amara," she whispered, "I can't ask you to forgive me. What I did to you was monstrous. I told myself I was saving my family, but I destroyed it instead." Amara's throat tightened. "You didn't just destroy it, you buried it. You made me invisible. My daughter grew up thinking her mother didn't want her." "I know," Adanna said, her voice cracking. "Every night, for 20 years, I heard the sound of that lie in my head. And now I hear it in my dreams." Amara's eyes glistened. "Why now? Why ask for forgiveness when the damage is already done?" Adanna reached into her robe and handed Ngozi the sealed envelope. "Because the truth must outlive me. This letter goes to the ministry. I've confessed to framing you, Amara. Your name will be cleared. The world will know you were innocent." Ngozi stared at the envelope, her hands trembling. "You'd give up everything." Adanna smiled faintly, her eyes wet. "Everything I ever built was nothing but dust. I don't need power where I'm going." A long silence followed. The wind shifted and petals rained down around them. Amara swallowed hard. "You're sick," she said quietly. Adanna nodded. "The doctors call it late-stage heart failure. Fitting, isn't it? A woman who never knew how to use her heart dying because it finally stopped working." Ngozi gasped softly. "Grandma." Adanna reached for her granddaughter's hand, her fingers cold but steady. "I don't expect you to love me, child. But I hope you can remember me not as the monster I became, but as a broken woman who finally learned she was wrong." For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. Then Amara spoke, her voice trembling but strong. "You took everything from me, Adanna. But if I hold on to hatred, I become what you were. I forgive you, not for you, but for me, for her, for peace." Adanna closed her eyes, tears spilling freely now. "Thank you," she whispered. Ngozi leaned forward, wrapping her arms around both women, the mother who had suffered and the grandmother who had sinned. For the first time, 3 generations of the same blood sat together under one sky, bound not by lies or power, but by fragile truth. Weeks later, the news broke across Lagos media outlets. Business icon confesses to wrongful imprisonment case. Decades-old injustice overturned. Amara's name was officially cleared. The court restored her rights and a public statement declared her innocence. The media called it the Okafor redemption. In the small apartment in Surulere, life moved on quietly. Amara continued her cleaning work, not out of necessity but humility. Ngozi ran her company with a new mission: fairness, integrity, empathy. She began sponsoring programs for single mothers and women, rebuilding their lives after wrongful convictions. One morning, a courier arrived with a package. Inside was a small box wrapped in gold ribbon. No note. Amara opened it carefully. Inside lay the old photograph, her Chidi and baby Ngozi, and a single purple jacaranda flower pressed and preserved. A soft smile curved her lips. She remembered. Ngozi looked over her shoulder, tears shining. She found peace. Amara nodded, and so did we. Months later, under a calm evening sky, mother and daughter stood together at the edge of Greenwood Cemetery before a new headstone. Adanna Okafor, 1938, 2025. She learned too late that love is the only legacy worth leaving. Amara placed the jacaranda flower on the grave, and Ngozi squeezed her mother's hand. She was a complicated woman, Amara said softly, but she gave you life, and in her own twisted way she gave it back to me. Ngozi nodded, whispering a prayer. May she rest finally where truth doesn't hurt anymore. They stood there until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in orange and purple hues, the same colors that had once filled Adanna's garden. Then turning toward the city, Amara said quietly, "Let's go home." And together they walked away, not as victims of the past, but as women reborn through love and truth. The wind swept gently through the trees, carrying the scent of rain, of forgiveness, and of freedom.